Hello everyone, David here. So I'm trusting that if you're watching this video, you would have already played Batman Arkham Knight. If you haven't, then just stop the video right now, play the game, and then come back, because I'm going to be talking some very deep spoilers, or at least, you know, the things that I feel the need to talk about, because there's a couple of things here and there that I can mention that I wouldn't have otherwise mentioned in my review, because there are neat little surprises, but I'm just hitting the key points, the things that stood out to me the most out of the story for Arkham Knight that I did consider to be spoilers, of course, as some of them are kind of obvious, but let's go ahead and start talking about them right now. Again, if you have not played Arkham Knight, please exit the video to your left, or your right, play buttons on the right. So please exit the video now, go and watch my initial review if you still are on the fence about whether or not you should buy the game, but if you have already purchased it or are planning on purchasing it anyway, play it, beat it, and then come back and watch this video. So let's go ahead and talk about the big one. The Joker returns in Arkham Knight. Sort of. They managed to find, in my opinion, an excellent way to bring back the Joker without actually bringing back the Joker to life, through the form of a hallucination that Batman sees not just at the beginning of the game, but for the rest of the game, as long as he's, you know, getting tripped up on that hallucinogenic fear toxin. And what is interesting is the fact that any other person would see their deepest fears in one instance, and that would just traumatize them for life. Whereas Batman continues to see Joker pop up, not just in the story for the game, but the environment. Every time you visit a new location, whether it be in the main story or in even a side mission, Joker is there to say something smartass, but at the same time, just steal the show. He was the scene-stealing element that I was talking about in my initial review, where I was just like, every time he was on screen, he stole the show away from Batman, and I miss the guy so bad. And I'm so happy that I believe Mark Hamill returned to play the Joker. So Hamill either trolled us all when he said he was retiring the Joker after Arkham City, or maybe he really did have plans to retire the character, but then Rocksteady said, hey, here's the script for Arkham Knight, give it a read. If you don't like it, you can pass, we'll write your character out some way. But if you like it enough, then please come back. And apparently Mark Hamill must have loved it enough to return to play the Joker once more, and it was amazing. And what I loved about it was that there was a bit of a Fight Club element to it. Alright, this felt like Fight Club, and spoilers for Fight Club if you have not watched the movie, but in Fight Club, one of the big twists in the movie, the big twist in the movie, and one of the best twists in cinematic history, is the fact that Tyler Durden, this guy that the narrator befriended at the beginning of the movie, was actually in his, it was him. It was a different personality that was coming out ever so often and manipulating his body to do things and to form the Fight Club. And we kind of have a similar thing here where the Joker is Batman's Tyler Durden. He practically is. I mean, there's so many scenes that are very reminiscent of Fight Club, and this was definitely one of them. And I love the literal inner battle that Batman had with the Joker inside of his head at the end of the game, where there's so many facets about the mind, Batman's mind, that were very metaphorical, but it just worked. Seeing Joker win at first, but then Batman comes out of the shadows and triumphs, delivering that awesome line, I am vengeance, I am the night, I am Batman, and just throwing Joker into that little containment. And Joker's last line really did embody what the Joker's all about. I need you. I need Batman to exist, because Joker can't exist without Batman. Batman, in a way, based on how the ending of this game plays out, Batman, at least the definitive Batman of the guy in the cowl, you know, dressing up as Batman, that kind of thing, can't exist without the Joker either, even though he doesn't bring himself to admit it. So in a way, they kind of cemented that with that internal conflict he had with himself at the end of the game. And it is also during that section where I said that Rocksteady can show what they can do outside of the third-person action-adventure genre, because there's certain moments where it played out like a first-person shooter. You know, Joker's going around blowing people away. Joker's going around blowing people away, blowing some of the supervillains away, thus representing the inner struggle that Batman has been doing this entire time. And I just love it. I love every facet of the Joker. Well, almost. I have to admit, I was a little confused, a little weirded out by the little subplot about what the Joker did back in Arkham City. When he was sick, he was going through these blood transfusions in order to help himself get better, and some people were affected by that. So there's a scene where Batman brings in Gordon and says, hey, this is the thing that I've been doing on the side. I've been tracking people down that have had some kind of blood transfusion with the Joker, in some way, shape, or form, and they might be infected with this thing that the Joker had at the time, and therefore brings out this maniacal subconscious out of them. It's almost like the Joker is jumping from mind to mind. And you have to stretch your disbelief somewhat there, because it does sound just ever... I don't want to say it sounds over the top, but it sounds like something that would exist in a comic book world. It's the one aspect about Arkham Knight that isn't 100% grounded in reality. The rest could be. The rest has a science to it. Whereas the Joker existing in these people's minds and bringing them out to a point where the guy that they believed was the cure to the whole thing, because it looked like he was immune, only to have somewhat of a delayed reaction to the transfusion, and then having him like pop out and be like, yeah, and then rubbing blood on his lips and smiling, seeming too much like the Joker. It's something, like I said, that is a bit more believable in a comic book world. You see it in the comics and you're like, okay. Whereas in a video game or in a movie, you'll have to stretch your imagination a bit to accept that. And I had to do that ever so slightly. I didn't mark the story's, the game's story down for that, but it's just something that I felt a little puzzled by. I didn't know whether to like it or dislike it, because it did make for some interesting drama, especially the scene where Batman shoves Robin into the cell and keeps him from being able to do anything, even, and adding insult to injury, having to tell him about Barbara, and I put quotations because of what I'm about to talk about next. But this whole thing with the blood transfusion, I'm a little mixed on, especially when you get to the scene of Henry Adams committing suicide by what seems to be mind control from Batman. It cuts to Batman forming like a fist, and then it shows his eyes and they're all green. It's almost like he used some kind of telepathic method to have Henry Adams kill himself, because, as Robin points out, Batman was actually going to be the last Joker unless he got cured, which we find out there was really no cure, except for Batman to have to deal with it internally in his head towards the end of the game through more of Scarecrow's fear toxin. But that does spark debate. Did Batman, in a way, commit murder in actual, like, real life? Not just in his head where he, like, snaps Joker's head and he kind of, like, accepts the fact that I'm gonna have to kill. But here, he actually indirectly kills Henry Adams by having him commit suicide through some kind of mind control thing. Now, while I was playing the game, I went on Twitter, and I posted, both in Twitter and Facebook actually, that I finally got to what I believed was the scene that earned the game the M rating. Because when they unveiled that the game was going to be rated M, a lot of people were like, oh my god, is it going to have something violent or graphic or disturbing? And disturbing was, I think, the proper word, because when they slapped that M rating, I reacted to it the same way that I would have reacted if a Batman movie was coming out and it was rated R. It wasn't going to be because of the violence or excessive language or drug use or sexuality or that kind of thing. I knew those things weren't exactly going to be in the game, or in this game, or if they should make a movie like that, in that movie. It's going to be because of the tone. It's going to be because of how dark it is and the implications and the stakes and how dire the situation can get. And I knew that that was going to be the case with Batman Arkham Knight. And this scene embodied that. And that's the scene of Barbara committing suicide in front of Batman. And the reason why I put quotations, and the reason why I kind of have this very cynical approach to the scene, is because I loved it when I first saw it. It really hit me in the feels. It was a huge bombshell. I was like, whoa. Rocksteady went there, and not only did they take out a beloved character, a character that I'm pretty sure everybody liked, myself included, especially now that we get to actually see her instead of just hearing her, like in Arkham Asylum and I believe City? I have to replay City. I really do have to replay City, but prior to this game, we would only hear her voice through through Batman's comms, and now this time she's taking part in the story and actually seeing her, emote and all this, and actually have us attached to the character emotionally. So to have her take herself out through Scarecrow's fear toxin, especially in a very well shot way, I love the way that they framed it by having Joker once again jumping into the scene, walking by and doing this motion like this, and right when he does it, you see a flash behind him, and then as he walks away, you just see you just see Barbara just lying there, lifeless. And I was like, whoa. This was just heavy. It was heavy, doc. Only Rocksteady to pretty much pull a Marvel, which is kind of ironic because this is a DC property, bully Marvel and bring back the character later on by explaining that, oh, it was all in Batman's head. It was a hallucination that he saw through the fear toxic. He was the one who was gassed, not Barbara. And it was a bummer because not only did that take away from the emotional toll that that scene had, therefore, if I were to watch it again, I'll just be like, well, now I know how that ends up, so it's not gonna touch me. It's still well shot, you know, well choreographed and whatnot, but I already know how it's gonna end up, and I would have to play along. So I've been playing it with a friend, and that friend gets floored by it, like, oh my god, did you see what happened? I'm like, oh yeah, that was disturbing her. Not only does it do that, but I also feel like it was slightly inconsistent because whenever you see Scarecrow take over somebody's mind, you see the world around them kind of get distorted, and it looks like a hallucination. It looks like stuff is seeming weird. So to have Barbara Gordon's death be seen like an actual event without any kind of indication that this was a hallucination, except for maybe Joker popping out in there, thus distorting reality a little bit. But still, it's not like other hallucinations that you see throughout the rest of the game, especially the one at the beginning with the cop killing all those people in the restaurant. So to see that is not being consistent, it almost felt like a cop-out. It felt like a trick. And it again, going back to my initial point, it would have given Rocksteady balls to make a decision with a character like that. On the bright side though, I did appreciate the Killing Joke scene, where they recreated that scene from the Killing Joke where Joker arrives at Barbara's apartment, knocks on the door, and then poof, incapacitates her, and then to make it even more disturbing, him taking the photos, which I knew was in the comic, but still, seeing it right there before my very eyes in motion and just having him walk out laughing while the entire room seems to be changing back into the clock tower slowly, but then you got that wall that's covered with, this is what happens when you get your friends involved or something like that. It was definitely one of the highlights of the story for the game. Still though, Rocksteady knew that they needed to make some kind of bold decision, so even though they didn't take out Barbara Gordon, they still didn't let every single person in the story walk away scot-free. Poison Ivy is one, if not probably the only significant character within the story that actually does get killed. And she goes out in a really good way, in a very sacrificial and well-meaning way, to where, sure, she wasn't on Batman's side, but she was on the side of nature, and she knew that Scarecrow was against nature, very reminiscent of something from Avengers Age of Ultron, where Vision kind of makes it clear that he's technically not on the Avengers side, but also on the Avengers side, because he knows that Ultron is a threat to life, and Vision's sole purpose is to protect life. So I was, okay, he's against life, so I guess I gotta just help you guys out, even though that's not kind of my purpose. Meaning that if the Avengers were to, you know, go against life and go rogue, so to speak, Vision is going to be there to stop them. And I feel like Ivy took a similar turn, where she wasn't on Batman's side, but she knew that nature was the only way to fight back against these toxins, otherwise they're gonna die. And being that Ivy is one with nature, and that's her only love in life practically, she sacrifices herself to hopefully give enough strength to the plants to defeat Scarecrow's toxin. And it was a good way to write this character out. And again, going back to my review, the change of her design complemented her role in the story, because going back to that original design of Ivy in Arkham City and Arkham Asylum wouldn't have worked for her sympathetic turn in the story for this game. But David, who's the Arkham Knight? Well, it's Jason Todd. That's right, one of the Robins, or I believe is the first Robin, Jason Todd, ends up being the Arkham Knight. So again, I mentioned in my review that I wasn't a huge fan. It didn't bug me. It didn't, it wasn't a humongous negative, but I felt more bad about Rocksteady not taking chances about who the Arkham Knight should have been, rather than Jason Todd actually being the Arkham Knight. I was more upset that Rocksteady didn't decide to create a brand new character that could have been woven into the story of not just this game, but also Arkham City. Therefore, there's this connection that has some history to it. But instead, they basically took an existing character and rewrote his origin story to them becoming the Red Hood, because at the end of this game, he takes off his Arkham Knight helmet that has the ears, and then underneath he has this helmet that's all red. And then by the end of the game, he takes off Batman takes off his little plate here that has the A, and then later he paints on the little red-ish, the red bat-ish looking symbol, and helps out Batman take out Scarecrow. And again, I'm more upset about them not taking chances with the character rather than Jason Todd himself being the Arkham Knight, because Rocksteady, the thing that Rocksteady said was that Arkham Knight was a brand new character for the series, and that made us go, oh, who's it gonna be? Who's this person? Is he a brand new character, or did they simply just take an existing character and twisted details about that character to turn him into the Arkham Knight? Well, it ended up being the latter, because they just took Jason Todd, and they still had the same outcome of him basically turning into the Red Hood, and in the middle twisted the storyline to have him be the Arkham Knight for this game, and then proceed on to become the Red Hood, as previously mentioned. And don't get me wrong, the Red Hood story, I love it. I love the Red Hood story. This tragedy of a character who put all his trust in Batman only to have essentially the devil, in this case the Joker, creep into his mind and just twist things around and just control him and brainwash him into being against Batman. But again, that father-son relationship that was just fractured, that gets me every time. And it did get me in this game, you know, hearing him, seeing those bits of him being tortured by the Joker, and then leading up to his reveal, and having him, you know, tell Batman not to call him Robin, not to call him Jason, and you know, just give him the middle finger. It's a tragic thing. And I do kind of wish that there was a little bit of resolution with him at the end, because he just helps out Batman take out Scarecrow with one single bullet from his sniper gun, and then just disappears. I wasn't expecting a reunion. I wasn't expecting a very soft and nice, happy ending for the two of them, you know, looking at each other, saying, you know, you could be my wingman any day, and then just fly into the sunset. I wasn't expecting that. But I was expecting, you know, at least one brief 5-second bit of Batman looking around for Jason Todd, and then just having a look on his face like, well, at least he came back. You know, not actually saying that, but just have a look on his face like, I think he's gonna be okay, and then just proceed on with the ending that we got. I would have liked that. Instead, he just helps him, and then he disappears. It disappears into GameStop DLC. But I do like that scene where Batman is in the car, and then Alfred says, "We're picking up a signal that's following you," and Batman knows who it is, and he's like, "I knew he would." And I love how subtly they play that. And it could be left up to your imagination about what Jason Todd did after the story for Arkham Knight wrapped up, with, you know, the GameStop DLC withstanding. It's left up to your imagination, and that's fun to come up with different outcomes for Jason Todd. But I do wish that Rocksteady could have done something else with the Arkham Knight entirely that I think could have still felt genuine to not just the story for Arkham Knight, but the story for Arkham City. And finally, there is the ending, which you can only get with 100% completion. And needless to say, since I wasn't going to do those Riddler trophies, I went straight to YouTube, pumped that shit up on 720p, because I have slow internet, so I was like, okay, 720p, so I could load up a little bit faster than 1080p, and I watched it. And it was a good ending, because here's the thing. You get two versions of the ending. The first one is Bruce Wayne taking off the cowl, turning off the bat signal, calling up Alfred saying, hey, we're heading out, and heads over to Wayne Manor. And then he gets there, you got all the reporters after the unveiling that he was Bruce Wayne by Scarecrow, blows up the mansion, forms the bat signal, and then you hear Gordon saying, this is how it happened. This is how the Batman died. Cut to credits. That was the ending that I got, because I managed to apprehend enough villains to activate the bare bones Nightfall Protocol. But to activate the full Nightfall Protocol, which is the full ending that Rocksteady intended, you need to apprehend and complete every single thing, including Riddler's trophies, which I knew I wasn't going to do. The regular ending is pretty much the same thing. The only difference, though, is that in that first half that I already saw, he, instead of calling up Alfred, he calls up Gordon and says, Gotham is safe. It's over now. He's like, okay, good. And Gordon sends in his troops, apprehends those thugs, everything's good to go, they take back their city. And then the rest of that ending proceeds as initially planned. Bruce goes to the Wayne Manor, blows it up. Gordon says, this is how it happened, this is how the Batman died. But then after that, you get a little bit of a monologue with Gordon by having him smoking a pipe with a voiceover. And then it looks like he's heading to what seems to be Tim Drake's, or Robin's, and Barbara Gordon's wedding. A lot of people were irked by the fact that Barbara and Tim Drake are together in this story. Apparently they're not initially supposed to be together. I'm not a huge follower of those particular characters, so I don't know exactly how that works, especially when you're dealing with a lot of Robins. I mean, you got Dick Grayson, Tim Drake, Jason Todd, so it gets kind of overwhelming at points. But a lot of people were upset with that. I didn't mind it. I was like, okay, they're together, whatever. Gordon is apparently going to their wedding, and on the way there, he continues to monologue. You see an overview of the city about who's going to protect the city now that the Batman's gone. And so we get something that has kind of bothered me before, and this is not the first time we see it. We saw this in Tim Burton's Batman, where for some reason they recreate the murder of the Waynes without actually recreating the murder of the Waynes. You got a father, a husband, a wife, and they got their kid. They're walking down Crime Alley, but it's not Bruce. You know, it's not Bruce because they look a little bit different, but they're mimicking them. And I'm like, why are we looking at this? They did the same thing at the beginning of the '89 Batman, and they're doing it again here. So you got these two thugs. They're trying to mug them, only to see a figure up in the distance that resembles Batman. So you're like, ha. You know, he faked us all out. But then something trippy starts to happen. That figure starts to elevate, smoke starts to come out, and then boosh! You see this giant manifestation, the city tears apart, everything is in flames, and then towards the camera lunges this bat figure. Cut to credits. So a lot of people are speculating, myself including, that Bruce, being that he has been exposed, he blew himself up in Wayne Manor, faked his death, and now he's doing Batman full time. He's not leading a double life. He led people astray into thinking that Bruce is now dead. Somebody targeted him. Somebody blew up his house, that kind of thing. And then he is using a modified version of Scarecrow's fear toxin, which I believe did get mentioned earlier in the story, and now he's using that to create this legend. One that was actually mentioned if you complete the Riddler side quest. When him and Catwoman are saying goodbye to each other, which I also looked up on YouTube, he mentions that the city's gonna need something bigger than him, something that just terrifies the living hell out of people, something scarier, something angrier, something much more aggressive. And this is it. A demon, a bat demon, so to speak, flying over the skies of Gotham, and that's what Bruce ultimately needed to become. So with the help of the fear toxin, he is now this modified version of Batman that feels more like a ghost or a demon, and much more than a man, something that Gotham now needs at this point in order to keep it in check. So that's pretty much the ending that people have kind of accumulated in their heads based on the imagery, and I love it. I love that. It's a really good way to hearken to those comics. I believe there is a comic that has to deal with this kind of thing, and at the same time make for an ending that does feel like wrapping up this version of Batman's story and then continuing things without actually there to be the need for another Batman game or a comic book or anything like that. I'm satisfied with this ending. Let me know in the comments what you thought as well. And that really pretty much does it for my spoiler discussion of Arkham Knight. So if you have played the game, which I'm trusting you did based on you finishing this video now, please post in the comments what you thought. Go ahead and go crazy because this is a spoiler video, so people should know what the comments will entail. Let me know what you loved about the game, what you didn't like about the game, specific details, all that good stuff. I really want to hear it. And hopefully if I have time and I don't manage to forget, because I have a lot on my plate these days, maybe I can respond and we can go ahead and start up a discussion about Arkham Knight. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.